Something just happened in Washington that has people across both parties sitting up straight. In the middle of the night, the United States Senate took a step that is almost unheard of against a president from the same party. And the timing alone is raising eyebrows. This vote didn't happen at noon. It didn't happen during prime time. It happened in the dead of night, when most Americans were asleep. And here's why this matters. Reports suggest the Senate just moved to formally condemn a sitting president, and not with a close vote. We're talking about 67 senators, including 19 Republicans, backing a resolution at around 2:47 a.m. saying Donald Trump violated his oath of office. That is not normal politics. That is not a routine party fight. That is a major warning sign that something serious has shaken Capitol Hill. Stay with me, because the details being described by sources are intense, and the reaction inside the White House is being described as strange and quiet, and that silence might be the loudest part of the story. Before we get into the timeline, make sure you're subscribed, because stories like this change fast and new developments can drop at any moment. So what sparked this? According to multiple reports and accounts being discussed by people close to the process, the vote was triggered by what is being described as a leaked transcript and an audio recording connected to a Situation Room meeting. Now, to be clear, much of what is being said publicly is still being framed as allegations, and the full recording has not been released to the public. But sources indicate that lawmakers who reviewed descriptions of it believe the claims are so serious that they felt they could not stay silent. And here's the part that has even longtime Trump defenders reacting. Sources familiar with the matter claim the material allegedly describes direct pressure to use federal law enforcement against political opponents, including claims of instructions to build cases even if evidence wasn't there. Again, those are allegations, but they are the kind of allegations that, if true, would cross lines most Americans believe should never be crossed. What makes this moment so explosive is not just that Democrats are upset, it's that Republicans, some of them, reportedly decided they had to join in. When nearly 20 Republican senators break away from their own president, especially in a late-night vote, analysts believe it signals panic and urgency behind the scenes. Here's the broader backdrop. For months, tensions between the White House and Congress have been rising. There have been clashes over executive actions, fights involving federal courts, and repeated arguments about the role of the Justice Department. None of that is new in Washington, but sources suggest everything escalated dramatically after a leak that reportedly landed with the Senate Intelligence Committee. According to accounts circulating among reporters and officials, a career intelligence analyst is said to have provided material described as a 47-minute audio recording tied to a meeting dated January 3rd, with it allegedly reaching lawmakers around January 17th. We cannot independently confirm the details in that recording, and the public hasn't heard it. But several senators are said to have been briefed on it in a secure setting, and their reported reactions are what pushed this story into a different category. The description is disturbing. Sources indicate the recording allegedly includes talk of targeting political opponents, coordinating timing around elections, and even pushing for outcomes that would help politically. Some accounts even claim there were discussions about creating or shaping evidence. These are extremely serious allegations, and that's exactly why the Senate reaction matters so much. Now let's talk about what reportedly happened after lawmakers got access. Reports suggest that on January 18th, members of the Senate Intelligence Committee reviewed the material in a secure facility, and what followed, according to multiple accounts, was immediate alarm. A condemnation resolution against a sitting president is not something senators do lightly. It's not like a simple statement for cable news. It's meant to be a formal declaration that lawmakers believe a president violated the core duty of the office. Sources familiar with the process say the whistleblower's identity is being protected under legal safeguards, and that the person is described as someone with many years in signals intelligence. Some reports claim this person struggled with the choice to come forward, weighing secrecy rules against what they believed was a higher duty. A source quoted in major media reportedly described the decision as a matter of conscience, fear that staying quiet would make them part of something dangerous. Then comes what might be the turning point. According to sources, a bipartisan group of senators held an emergency closed-door meeting after the material was reportedly authenticated through internal review steps. The group is described as including Democrats, Republicans, and at least one independent. And what's being reported about the mood is striking. Lawmakers allegedly came out shaken, quiet, and serious. Nothing like the normal smiling cameras and hallway soundbites. One report claims a Republican senator known as a strong conservative defender of Trump appeared visibly rattled, even saying what he heard made him feel sick. Another account attributes comments to an independent senator saying the alleged content looked like one of the clearest examples of abuse of power they had seen in decades. These are claims about reactions, not proof of the underlying allegations, but that reaction is what set the stage for what happened next. By the end of that closed meeting, sources say senators drafted a formal condemnation resolution, language described by reporters as unusually direct. Accounts say it accused the president of undermining the Justice Department and attempting to use law enforcement for political goals. Some reports even say it referenced specific federal laws often discussed in civil rights and abuse of power contexts. Again, the public has not seen every detail that senators reportedly reviewed, but the Senate's action signals they believe this is not a small matter. Now, here is where the story turns from serious to unbelievable. When the resolution hit the Senate floor late at night, around 11:40 p.m., reports suggest Senate leadership tried to block or delay it. But in a surprise move, a group of Republican senators reportedly joined Democrats and independents to force the chamber into a vote process anyway. The numbers being reported show that effort succeeded. And then, according to people who were there, the room changed. Reporters described a Senate floor that went almost silent. Some senators reportedly looked down at their desks, others stared straight ahead. Some staff members along the walls were said to be emotional. It was not a loud, cheering moment. It was described as heavy, like lawmakers believed they were stepping into history. Then, at around 2:31 a.m., another moment reportedly hit the chamber like a thunderclap. Multiple accounts say Senator Mitch McConnell, who has been one of the most powerful Republicans of the modern era, and who previously voted to acquit Trump in impeachment trials, stood and said he would vote yes on the condemnation. If accurate, that is a stunning political signal. According to descriptions from reporters, McConnell reportedly argued that ordering law enforcement to go after political enemies, especially through fabricated or forced evidence, is not normal executive power. It is something darker, and one word being attributed to him has spread like wildfire: tyranny. If that description of his remarks is correct, it would explain why senators reacted the way they did. Because when a major figure inside a president's own party uses language like that, it changes how the public sees the fight. It stops looking like a normal partisan battle and starts looking like a crisis of the system itself. Accounts say McConnell spoke for several minutes, bringing up America's constitutional tradition and warning against executive power being used for personal revenge. Some reports even claim he referenced family history and the idea that some votes are bigger than the next election. Whether every word is exactly as described or not, the political message is clear. The Senate was signaling that this issue had moved beyond routine conflict. And this is where analysts are drawing comparisons carefully to other moments in American history. During Watergate, Republican lawmakers eventually turned on Richard Nixon after evidence and tapes shaped the story in a way that was hard to explain away. Nixon, as history records, resigned. During Bill Clinton's scandal, the focus was personal misconduct and sworn statements about private behavior. With Trump's first impeachment, Republicans largely stayed unified, arguing the evidence did not justify removal. But the key difference, analysts say, is what is being alleged here. If the claims are true, it's not about private behavior or political hardball. It's about the idea of using federal law enforcement as a weapon, something that would strike at the heart of equal justice under the law. Now, what are the alleged details that have senators so alarmed? Sources indicate that the recording is described as capturing a president pushing for investigations into specific Democratic governors. Names being circulated in these reports include governors like Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, and Gavin Newsom of California. The alleged point, according to these accounts, was not that there was clear evidence of crimes, but that these leaders were effective political opponents. Then there's another claim, that there was discussion of timing, making sure legal moves would happen during primary season, and even during high-visibility campaign moments. The goal, according to descriptions, would be maximum media impact. And then comes what is being described as the most severe allegation, that the president allegedly suggested evidence should be created or found if needed. Senators who reportedly heard or reviewed descriptions of the tape claim the tone was not cautious, it was direct. One specific line being repeated by sources is that the targets needed to be in handcuffs by a major election moment, with an alleged message of not caring what had to be invented to get there. To be crystal clear, these claims are not verified in public evidence at this time. They are being described through reports and accounts from senators and sources. But even as allegations, they explain why the Senate response came so fast and why the vote happened at such an unusual hour. Because if lawmakers believe a president attempted to push law enforcement into creating cases against political enemies, the consequences are massive, not just for one party, but for the country. Here's what should concern everyone. No matter who they vote for, if the public ever accepts the idea that a president can use the FBI or DOJ to hurt opponents, the system changes overnight. It would mean justice depends on power, not evidence. And once that door opens, any future president, Republican or Democrat, could be tempted to use it. That's why these allegations are being described as a potential constitutional crisis. This also puts Republicans in Congress in a brutal position. On one side, many voters remain loyal to Trump and see criticism as betrayal. That creates pressure to attack the leak, dismiss the claims, and argue this is all a political setup. On the other side, senators are now on record, through this condemnation vote, signaling they believe the alleged behavior is unacceptable. That's a conflict that can split a party. And here's the trap. Analysts say there is no easy defense. Either the recording is authentic, and the alleged conduct would be extremely serious, or it is fake, which would imply a massive, coordinated deception involving intelligence professionals, forensic review, committee leadership, and senators from the president's own party. That second option is hard for many people to accept. The first option is politically devastating. Legal commentators are already weighing in. Reports suggest constitutional scholars have said that if the recording matches descriptions, it could represent one of the most serious alleged abuses of presidential power ever discussed in modern times. Some analysts have argued that this would not just be about impeachment, it could become about criminal exposure, depending on facts and proof. Even some legal voices typically friendly to strong executive power have reportedly said that ordering fabricated evidence would cross clear legal lines. And prosecutors quoted in media have suggested that if such a thing were proven, it would move beyond politics and into the world of criminal law. So what happens next? First, the political damage is immediate. A bipartisan Senate condemnation, especially with nearly 20 Republicans, sends a message to every other Republican lawmaker. Breaking with Trump is possible. It gives cover to people who were afraid of primary challengers. And it could trigger more defections. Second, the legal process may accelerate. Reports indicate the House Judiciary Committee is preparing emergency action, with hearings expected soon. If a recording exists and can be authenticated, it could become central evidence, because it would not depend on conflicting memories or partisan testimony. It would be the president's own words if verified. Third, the Justice Department itself could face internal shockwaves. Sources claim career officials are struggling with morale, and there are reports of resignations and internal protest. Law enforcement organizations have reportedly expressed concern about political pressure and the risk of damage to public trust. And beyond Washington, the ripple effects are already being discussed. Some reports claim state attorneys general across party lines are communicating about how to respond if federal investigations appear politically motivated. Others have suggested lawsuits could come fast if states feel targeted without proper cause. And then there's the election impact. Every Republican candidate could now face a simple, brutal question at town halls and debates. Do you stand with the president accused, at least by these reports, of trying to turn law enforcement against political opponents? Overnight polling mentioned in some coverage suggests independents are watching closely, and many say the allegations, if proven, would be disqualifying. But now we get to the part of this story that is raising even more eyebrows. What happened at the White House after the vote? Reports suggest the White House went quiet, almost completely. No immediate statement, no public briefing. Phones reportedly going unanswered. Journalists said the morning after the vote felt unusual, with no clear messaging. One anonymous official quoted in political coverage described the mood inside the West Wing as angry and chaotic. Some accounts claim staff were seen packing personal items, unsure what the next week might look like. We cannot confirm those details independently, but they match the idea of an administration bracing for impact. Then, later in the morning, the president responded through social media. Reports describe Trump's posts as furious, accusing critics of betrayal and attacking Republicans who supported the condemnation. The posts reportedly focused more on personal attacks than on directly addressing the substance of the allegations. And legal experts quickly warned that public threats toward lawmakers could create additional issues, depending on what is said and how it is interpreted. And here's what makes that response so important. Analysts believe it follows the same pattern at the center of the allegations, using pressure and intimidation instead of answering the core question. Because in a moment like this, people are looking for one thing: clarity. If the recording is fake, where is the proof it's fake? If it's real, why would any leader defend what's being described? The Senate vote suggests many lawmakers believe the situation is already beyond normal damage control. Let's zoom out and be clear about where this stands right now. Reports suggest 67 senators, including 19 Republicans, just voted to condemn a sitting president over allegations tied to political use of federal law enforcement. The White House response has been described as delayed and aggressive. Legal voices are discussing not just impeachment, but possible criminal exposure depending on evidence. And the Senate Intelligence Committee is reportedly preparing additional steps, including releasing a redacted transcript. And sources indicate there could be more. Some reports suggest additional recordings may exist, possibly involving other top officials, and there are even whispers, according to political insiders, that private discussions may be happening about extreme constitutional options. Internationally, the story is also being watched. Allies are reportedly calling for calm and due process. Rivals are reportedly using the chaos for propaganda. Markets have reportedly reacted with uncertainty because investors hate one thing more than bad news: unclear news. Even the military is being dragged into the conversation indirectly, with reports claiming senior leaders have privately reassured lawmakers that the armed forces remain committed to the Constitution and will not take part in anything outside lawful orders. That kind of reassurance may be routine, but in a moment like this, it takes on a whole new meaning. So here we are. A late-night Senate vote, a rare condemnation, members of the president's own party breaking away, a White House that went dark and then went on the attack, emergency hearings on the horizon, and reports of more evidence possibly coming. This isn't a story that ends in one news cycle. This is a story that could reshape politics, power, and the public's trust in the justice system. And now the biggest question, the one hanging over everything, is this. If the Senate is willing to take a step this dramatic based on what they say they've seen and heard, what is in the material the public hasn't heard yet, and what happens when it finally comes out?